In 1910, Agnes Johnston walked out her front door to collect the morning paper and found her porch steps ended at a vertical drop of 90 feet into a canyon carved by pressurized water. Her Victorian house sat balanced on a tower of raw earth, marooned in midair while industrial cannons roared below, washing the ground away in all directions. Seattle had begun erasing Denny Hill, a 240-foot mountain in the center of downtown, using hydraulic mining technology borrowed from Alaskan gold fields. Because property law protected the buildings but not the land beneath them, engineers simply removed the earth from under homeowners who refused to sell. Today, AI reconstruction reveals the surreal geometry of these spite mounds. Ordinary homes with lace curtains and flower boxes perched on shrinking pillars while millions of tons of liquefied dirt flowed past them into Elliott Bay. The cable car climbs 3rd Avenue, lurching upward at angles that force passengers to grip their seats. Through the window, downtown Seattle recedes below. The brick warehouses, the masts crowding the harbor. At the summit, the Washington Hotel sprawls across manicured lawns, its turrets catching the late sun over Puget Sound. A woman in a morning dress steps from the hotel entrance onto a wraparound porch. 240 feet below, barely audible, steam whistles from the waterfront factories drift upward. This was Denny Hill as it existed in 1900. It rose 240 feet above Elliott Bay at its peak, occupying roughly 60 city blocks in what is now downtown Seattle. The hill was covered with elegant Victorian homes, hotels, and the Washington Hotel at the summit with panoramic views. But the steep grades, some reaching 18% slope, made wagon traffic nearly impossible and isolated the neighborhood from the profitable flat districts near the waterfront. Seattle's original street grid, platted in 1853, was drawn on flat paper with no accommodation for topography. Street addresses on opposite sides of Denny Hill were legally adjacent, but separated by a 200-foot elevation change and a half-mile detour. The Summit neighborhood was Seattle's most fashionable address, precisely because of its elevation and views. The city condemned it as worthless because those same slopes prevented grid expansion. Within 5 years, the city engineer would stand at this exact spot and see nothing but sky. The monitor nozzle roars, a jet of white water 3 feet wide striking the cliff face with a sound like continuous thunder. The earth does not crumble. It explodes into mist. Clay, gravel, and boulders the size of dining tables vanish into brown foam. A worker adjusts the nozzle angle with a long iron bar. The stream pivots, and a Victorian house foundation 40 feet up the slope begins to tilt. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the water screams. Mist hangs over downtown in a permanent fog that tastes of minerals. Seattle contracted the Hydraulic Sluicing Company in 1908, importing technology from Yukon gold mining. Giant nozzles called monitors blasted water at over 100 pounds per square inch. Water pumped from Lake Union through fire hoses powered jets that could shoot 200 feet, liquefying clay and glacial till into slurry. Between 1908 and 1911, approximately 8.9 million cubic yards of earth were washed into Elliott Bay, extending the Seattle shoreline westward by blocks. The sluicing operation required continuous 24-hour shifts because stopping the water flow would cause the liquefied earth to solidify in the sluiceways. This created enormous dams that could collapse catastrophically. The destruction literally could not be paused once begun. Records from Reginald Thompson, the city engineer, described the operation in his 1950 memoir, That Man Thompson, alongside photographs archived by the Seattle Municipal Archives showing the monitors in operation. The same technology that built the American West by extracting gold was repurposed to erase a mountain, turning geological removal into profit through real estate rather than precious metals. Hydraulic mining transforms land from a fixed inheritance into a fluid commodity. By liquefying geography itself, cities could treat terrain as inventory to be relocated for maximum financial efficiency. The Denny Regrade inaugurated the modern era where place has no permanence. But the water could only take what the city legally owned. Washington state property law protected structures, but not the land itself. The city could lower street grades without compensating for loss of ground access. At least 17 property owners refused to sell. As earth was sluiced away around them, their homes remained on pedestals of protected soil. Some pillars reached 90 to 100 feet tall, with base diameters of only 20 to 30 feet. These were geologically unstable towers of glacial till, held together by the building foundation above. Holdout residents continued living in their homes during the excavation. They accessed them via temporary wooden stairways built by the city, staircases that had to be rebuilt every few weeks as the surrounding grade dropped, growing taller and more precarious. Court records from City of Seattle versus Johnston and others, filed in 1910, document the legal battle over these structures. Photographs by Webster and Stevens, now held by the Museum of History and Industry Seattle, show houses balanced impossibly on earthen spires. Agnes Johnston opens her front door. The morning is cold. Fog dense enough that she cannot see the bottom. Her porch, once 3 steps above street level, now cantilevers into void. The wooden staircase the city built last month descends at a steep angle, railings slick with condensation, 87 steps disappearing into the sound of rushing water below. Behind her, the house is intact. Wallpaper, furniture, the kitchen, stove still warm. She carries a shopping basket. The first step creaks. Below, invisible, the hydraulic monitors begin their daily thunder. The law designed to protect homeowners from displacement instead created a bureaucratic nightmare where citizens retained legal possession of houses that had become physically uninhabitable islands. The spite mounds reveal the spatial violence of legal abstraction. When property rights are defined as titles on paper rather than inhabitable space, the law can technically preserve ownership, while engineering makes that ownership meaningless. An eyewitness account published in the Seattle Times on April 12, 1911, describes residents hanging laundry on clotheslines strung across chasms, their backyards now separated from their front yards by 50-foot drops. One by one, through 1911, the holdouts sold. By 1912, Denny Hill was completely removed. The summit that once stood 240 feet high was flattened to 80 feet, creating the modern Denny Triangle. The last spite mound was demolished in September 1911 after the final holdout. James Denny Jr., nephew of the hill's namesake, accepted a settlement. Today, the only physical traces are the abrupt retaining walls at the regrade boundaries. Vertical cliffs where excavation stopped at property lines. The dirt washed into Elliott Bay did not settle evenly. It created unstable underwater slopes that caused periodic submarine landslides for decades, including a major collapse in 1932 that damaged the waterfront seawall. Seattle waterfront engineering records document the ongoing instability. The hill continued to move even after its destruction. A geographical feature that took 15,000 years of glaciation to create was erased in less than 4 years. Yet its absence continues to shape Seattle's infrastructure challenges a century later. The perfect flatness of Denny Triangle embeds amnesia into the city's form. When terrain is erased rather than built over, even the memory of what existed becomes unimaginable, because the city's current geometry appears natural and inevitable. USGS topographic comparisons between 1897 and 1930 show the complete transformation. But standing in the Denny Triangle today, there is no intuitive way to reconstruct the mountain that occupied this space. The mountain became a grid, The grid became Amazon's headquarters, and the houses that once floated in the air exist now only in a handful of photographs, too strange to believe without seeing them. The glass spheres of Amazon's downtown campus sit on land that once stood 160 feet higher, and every perfectly flat block of Denny Triangle is a ghost of the mountain that was liquefied to create it. I keep returning to those photographs of Agnes Johnston's house balanced on its pillar of earth. The lace curtains still hanging in the windows, the porch railing intact, a home in every detail except the ground beneath it. When we say a city is built, do we mean the buildings? Or do we mean the act of deciding which earth deserves to remain?